Hello, welcome back, Matt from MrLeica.com. So today we're looking at the first lens in the new lens review series, and these lenses are called Leica thread mount lenses or Leica screw mount lenses. So to kick it off, today we're looking at the Canon 50mm f1.8, and I believe this is called the version 2 lens. So you can see this is a coated lens front element and the back element also. So there's also a version 3 which looks slightly different to this, but this is the kind of the black and silver version 2. Feel free to correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but that is what I believe from my research. So in this video I'll tell you a bit more about this lens and I'll show you some example photos, both shot on film and digital cameras. Okay, so the Canon 50mm f1.8 lens was released, I believe, in 1956, and at the time of release it was said to cost 27,000 yen, and that converts to about £200 in kind of today's money from doing the current conversion. Now the cost of this lens today used is around £100 on eBay, and you can find them for even less than that. I've seen some going for less than £90, and then the price can go over £200 depending on kind of condition and things like that. So as a Leica shooter, let's just give this some context. So this is a Leica Summicron 50mm f2 lens. If you've not seen the video, I can link it below. And in terms of size, you can see the size difference. And in terms of price, this is £1,000 used roughly, £100 used roughly, and they're both more or less an f2 lens, obviously f1.8, f2, so in terms of photo difference there's not a huge difference. So for 10 times less you can have a lens which will give you a similar focal length and a similar kind of maximum aperture, and it's a smaller lens and it's a lighter lens. The only main difference is the Summicron is a 39mm filter thread, which is the standard Leica filter thread, whereas the Canon is a 40mm filter thread. So here's a vintage 40mm filter. So it's worth picking up some 40mm filters if you buy this lens. I bought a pack of 3 and I got a red, a yellow and a green. Now in terms of weight, this lens weighs 188 grams, which makes this a light lens. Anything less than 200 grams is particularly light. So that's always a big bonus to me, as I like to have kind of lightweight, small compact kit. In terms of size as well, there is the 51.8 in my left hand, and here is a 50mm 1.4, which you'll see in a future video. Feel free to subscribe if you want to see this other Canon lens in a future video. So 1.8, 1.4, both the Canon lenses, but you can see the size difference. So here we have the Leica 3A, which is a Leica screw mount camera or thread mount camera, which means this lens will fit this camera. And the size of the 51.8 is a really nice pairing with the nice and compact Barnett Leica cameras. So there you have a really nice setup if you enjoy shooting 50mm. These cameras have a 50mm fixed kind of viewfinder, so it suits lenses which are also 50mm kind of focal length. If you want to fit the Canon lens onto a Leica M camera, you need a Leica thread mount to Leica M mount adapter, such as this one. If you buy one of these adapters on eBay, make sure you get one that says 50mm here, and then it will show you 50mm frame lines in the viewfinder. This particular adapter is designed for the 35mm lenses, and it will give you a 35mm frame line. But as you'll see in a second, for the way I use it, it's not necessary to have the 50mm specific finder. The reason for that is because my weapon of choice is the amazing Leica M3. Now the Leica M3 shows a 50mm frame line, which means I don't need to worry about what adapter I use. So using the adapter, obviously red dot to red dot, like so. So there you have the Leica M3 with the Canon 50 1.8. Now this is a setup I've used quite a lot, and you'll see some example photos at the end of this video. But this is a really nice setup because you have the amazing Leica M3 magnified viewfinder with the 50mm frame lines filling the whole viewfinder window. And then you have a really nice lens, which is smaller and lighter than the Leica 50mm lenses, and obviously a fraction of the cost. So if you're on the market for, say, a 50mm Leica setup, instead of buying one 50mm Leica lens, you could actually treat yourself to an M3, which will probably last you for life, and then a lens for the same cost. You can probably find a Leica M3 body and Canon 50mm 1.8 lens for a similar cost to a 50mm Leica lens. So really nice setup, and as I say, my kind of current go-to setup for shooting portraits. Okay, so if we just have a closer look at the lens, it has an aperture scale of f1.8 through to f22 with aperture clicks. There's no half stops, so these are full stop clicks, with obviously the exception of f1.8 to f2. The Canon 50mm f1.8 LTM lens has a close focus distance of 1 meter, which is potentially a drawback if, like me, you like to focus close to your subject. And as we've already talked about, it is a Leica screw mount lens or Leica thread mount lens, also abbreviated as LTM or L39. This lens has an 8-blade design. You can probably see it better on the back. And it also has a focusing tab and lock. So when it gets to infinity, it locks, and then to release the lens, push down and twist. Did you see that? Locked, push down. I know some people don't like a focus lock, but it's never really bothered me too much. The lens is all kind of metal and glass. It's nicely made, no rattle, smooth focus throw. And probably no different to the build of old Leica lenses. In terms of lens characteristics, the 50-1.8 is impressively sharp, kind of at or close to wide open. I use it at f1.8 on digital, and I tend to shoot it at probably f2, f2.8 on film, just to capture that kind of extra bit of sharpness on the film negatives. On digital, you can just increase the sharpness to get the same effect. So I tend to shoot wide open on digital, and I have no problems whatsoever. Obviously, like most lenses, the more you stop the lens down, the sharper it will be. So if you want to get the sharpest images from this lens, you're probably better to shoot at, say, f8, f11, which goes for most lenses. I found the lens coating to be quite effective, and it doesn't seem to suffer too heavily from flare. But that said, I do have a Canon lens hood. So this is a 40mm lens hood designed for the 50-1.8 or 35 2.8 lens, which I also have. These lens hoods are really nice because, being a 40mm standard fit for vintage glass, you can use the same lens hood on a lot of your different vintage lenses. So great addition, but more necessary on some other vintage lenses than the Canon. But if you've got it, you're better to use it just to kind of give you that slightly increase in sharpness. So the overall look of this lens, I would say to be sharp with a slight vintage, slightly lower contrast look. And I'll let you see the example images, and you can decide for yourself and see the kind of the overall look that the lens gives. So in conclusion, I would say this is a impressively sharp lens for its age. It is reasonably flare resistant, and it gives a kind of slight vintage feel, and the contrast is probably less than you will see on kind of modern lenses, which tend to be very high contrast in most cases. I have vintage lenses which have much lower contrast and are much more prone to flare than the Canon. So I'd say this is kind of on the upper end of the scale in terms of one of the better vintage lenses you can buy for kind of usable images with kind of a slight vintage look rather than a soft, blurry, extra flared bad look, if that makes sense. So let's look at some example photos, and then it'll give you a better idea of what the lens can do. So firstly, we have some photos with the Canon 50mm f1.8 lens shot on digital. And all of these photos will be shot at f1.8. And now here we have example photos with the Canon 50mm f1.8 LTM lens shot on film. I think my favourite pairing is probably this lens on the Leica M3 camera, but I've also used it on the Barnett Leicas as well, which make a really nice small setup. Both setups are really good. I think if you are a Leica 3 user, then the Canon 50 1.8 is a definite kind of add to your wish list lens. It is one of the best fast lenses for the screw mount cameras. I talk about the Barnett Leicas, but you can also obviously use this on, say, a Voigtlander Bessa R camera or any other kind of vintage screw mount cameras. One thing I should probably mention, this is obviously a rangefinder coupled lens, which means when you're using this lens on any Leica rangefinder camera, it will work with the built-in rangefinder coupling. So that's it, a very quick review of potentially my favourite Leica thread mount lens, and a definite must-have for anybody wanting a fast 50mm at an absolute bargain price. I'll put some eBay links below for the 50mm 1.8. If you're based in the EU, you may have to wait a little bit of time to get one at kind of the prices that I'm quoting, or you may need to just import one from Japan, because like with most of the lenses I'm looking at, these lenses are more easily available in Japan than they are in the UK or Europe. When I researched the price for this video, I only found one listed in Europe, so you either need to be patient or just get one imported. But the cost is low, so the import kind of percentage extra cost will equally be low and kind of affordable. Just make sure, being a vintage lens, make sure that you check the description on the eBay listing for kind of no scratches, no haze, no fungus, things like that. Or perhaps do a video in the future on kind of buying vintage camera gear and lenses from eBay, things to look out for, things like that. If you're interested, drop me a message in the description and I'll try and put something together for you. Okay, that's it. Please give me a thumbs up if it'll fit in the screen and leave me a comment on whether you use this lens or not. If you don't use this lens but you use a similar Leica thread mount 50mm lens, what is your kind of favourite 50mm Leica thread mount lens? This is one of many to come in this series, so if you're not yet subscribed and you want notifications on all the future thread mount lens videos, do turn on your notifications so not to miss those. As always, a big thanks to my patrons, and see you again in the next video. Bye.